gender non-conforming citizens, if ever they are any in the room. My name is Yabulela Gentile. I'm the founding president of Not In My Name International, which is a civil rights movement that operates from Pretoria here in the capital city of South Africa. So Not In My Name International, as I said, is a civil rights movement that deals with social injustices in South Africa and abroad. Our focus is to, among other things, to empower citizens to use the powers that they possess through the Constitution, and also to ensure that they handle issues of public dissatisfaction in a non-destructive manner. We also assist victims and perpetrators of gender-based violence. We've also got a number of programs that are aimed at resocializing boy children. We've got a different and many other programs that we are busy on. But on this occasion of today, we really came to say to you that as an organization from all corners of the country and of the world, we stand in solidarity with you and we share your pain. And to say that, you know, what happened in Gatumba in 2004, it should never happen again anywhere else in Africa. But unfortunately, we've had something similar to that happening just here in Marikana. We are not new to massacres in this country as well, and in Africa in general. But we really want to say that, and even previously, we've had Sharpeville massacre in South Africa. So we understand what is it that you are commemorating here today. And we really want to say, just as I'm about to take my seat, we love you and we support you, and we want to say that we wish you all the best moving forward. People of Congo are us, and you know, we are together, we are one. We are a Pan-Africanist organization. We do not believe that there is us and them. All Africans in Africa can never be foreigners, and we really want to say on behalf of Not In My Name International, please be comforted. We are with you today, and moving forward, also remember your people who are, by the way, our people as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President of Not In My Name. May God bless you for the work you are doing with
the province of South Kivu. So we are here today to commemorate the 16th anniversary of GATUMBA Massacre. And then before we start, I don't have my presentation is on the papers, so I want Mr. Mundu or anyone else, you can take it, then distribute it to anyone. So I want really for you to follow what happened, the history of Banyamulenge. So the paper may be short, but those who want to get my presentation for more information and go through it for researching to know what happened or the history of Banyamulenge, you can come to me when we're done, then I can send it to you or give you any other information. And then after my presentation, we don't have enough time to for those who have questions to ask or have comments, but I will really appreciate if anyone who have comments or questions to come to me later on, so then we can chat. So as I said, my name is Beatrice. I'm a postdoc, a researcher at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. I also do a visiting scholar at Université de l'Afrique Subsaharienne, it's in French, so in DRC Congo. So let's go to our presentation. I want for all of us to look at 4 or 5 things for the history of Banyamulenge, for those who have the presentation with them, and those who do not, kindly follow me and look at me, so then we can be together. It's very nice when someone is looking at you while you are talking, so you know that they are following. We gather today here to commemorate 16th anniversary of GATUMBA Massacre against the Banyamulenge community. while we are remembering our innocent men and women fallen victims to hatred and intolerance, it is worth sharing with you today the history of Banyamulenge and how that might have contributed to this community's marginalization and the different atrocities committed against them throughout the history. Today, let's understand 5 or 4 things. Firstly, there is pre-colonial period, which has a history among this community, and the colonial period, and then post-colonial period, and how all this affected to the Banyamulenge community to face all these problems. Firstly, let's understand who are Banyamulenge. Banyamulenge is a group of Congolese Tutsi living in the highlands of South Kivu province. They mainly found in the Uvira, Fizi, and the Mwenga territories. The name Banyamulenge, derivative will come from the word Akarenge and Uturenge in the plural, which means small mountain. The people living in this village of those mountains were called Beneturenge. This is the Kinyamurenge name. And they were called also in different places where they were living, Abanyaturenge was a villages. According to the historical speculation, Banyamulenge are believed to have settled in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the province of South Kivu in some researchers they are saying between 16 and 17 centuries. Banyamulenge is a combination of people from different countries, including Rwanda, but before were not yet countries because they were empire, and Burundi, and then Tanzania. All these people were sharing the same economic activities as pastoralists or the cattle keepers. So I have some references there where you can go and get more information on this. So as we are having a short time, let's go to those who believed to come from Rwanda, came after the death of King Ndahiro to Chamatare between 1576 and 1592. After King's death, according to the traditions, the successor had to be chosen. However, the new king who was chosen, his name was Bamara, has his young brother, and his young brother was called the Bienshi. Consequently, Bienshi did not want to recognize his brother, which we call as Bamara, and then they were just having some conflict, as what we are calling today coup d'etat. I don't know if that is how they call it, I think even in English. So coup d'etat, so he wanted to remove his brother from to be king, is the one who was chosen as according to the tradition. From Rwanda, they entered the plain of Ruzizi. This was on the south of the area where they were living. I just said that this was not, the Africa was not divided, it was still empire. So it was in the same region, but they left going further to the south. And in the area where they go in this plain of Ruzizi was very hot place, because I told you, remember, was the cattle keepers. So they left as the area was not good for them, was not good even for the cattle. So they moved, go to the area which called Itombwe, is far from where they were living. And then when they arrived there, they found it's a good place for them to live, it's a good place for the cattle. Then they lived there. So the news went over to the other areas. As I said, Burundi for now is what we call the Burundi is a country, but was not even it was just only the same area, but far from where they're living. So you know, when you are a cattle keeper and you have a good life with all your livestock, so the news goes faster. When they reach there, and the other members of not even from them, but they heard that area is very good, they followed them. It's where we said the Banyamulenge are from Rwanda today, what we call the Rwanda, from Burundi, and the others from Tanzania. And after they settled in Itombwe, and then this time, according to researcher Muzuri and Kidogi, it was 1985. The first decree was given to Banyamulenge, and they were having the chiefs. One was called Kaira, and the other one, the second chief, was called Gahutu, and the third one was Budurege. Those they are chiefs from Banyamulenge into this decree was delivered to them on the 6th October 1891. The colonial regime created 3 chieftaincies for Banyamulenge. As I said, was for Kaira and the Budurege and the Gahutu. Then let's see the economic activities of Banyamulenge. The main economic activities of Banyamulenge are cattle keeping, and also they are doing also the business. While their neighbors were especially doing the cultivating the land and the hunting, the Banyamulenge provided them with the cows. They were having some exchange. Some they were providing the food, the others they were providing them the milk and the cows. So was some exchange between the neighboring countries. The neighboring ethnic groups. The Banyamulenge, Bafulero, Babembe, Banyindu, and the Bavira. And in this period, we are saying in the pre-colonial period, all this ethnic group, they were living in a good, like a good neighbors. They were having no problem between them, as all they were sharing everything what they do have. So the relationship between all these ethnic groups, it was good. All tribes have developed a system of economic exchange, as I said. The mainly Bafulero and the Banyamulenge, they were also having a strong relationship in the extent of where they can make that blackmail, you know, saying like we are very good friends, and they were sharing the bloods to say that nothing can stopping us to be friends. Showing in the African country is a good sign to show that we are very good friends. The families involved in this process become one family, was showing like we are a one family, then we can be a friends forever. Nothing else can separate us. According to organizers, we're just asking for the people who lived in the area to sell their lands. Banyindu were having the chiefs, so they decided to sell their lands and exchange it into the money. When they arrived to the Banyamulenge ethnic groups, they said, no, we can't sell our place where we getting the food and where the cattle are living. So we decided to say, no, we can't sell it. And the colonizers were strong that time, so they decided to they were resisting to send their lands. And in 1933, then the autonomous chiefs ruled by Banyamulenge were just abolished by those colonizers because they refused to send their lands to them and they sell it. And they were not having any other lands to stay because the colonizers were just abolishing their chieftaincies and sent them away. So they were just going and live with their neighbors. That is where all problems started. Just, I think you are following. Okay. Secondly, the other problem was started when the colonizers also deprived Banyamulenge many opportunities, such as infrastructures, schools, hospitals, electricity. For those who know the area, you can even face some tracks of what happened even during that time. You will see there are not more infrastructures or hospitals and electricity when you compare to the other area of the place in the DRC. So this was also the cause of not let them taking their lands. So they have to stop everything and all other opportunities. Let's see the negative consequences then. What happened after they abolished their chieftaincy and everything what they were having? One negative consequences is the work of, you can find it in the work of Mtambo, 1997. This work affirmed that the abolition of Banyamulenge sheferis prevented them from establishing their own customary system of land control. Because you don't have any place to stay, you are a foreigner, you are out with people from outside, not belonging in this country. It is worth noting that the political also realities of the colonialism regime affect the Banyamulenge, not only their relationship with their neighbors, also with the post-colonial regime. Let's see then, after post-colonial period, what happened to Banyamulenge. As we have seen during the colonial regime, political realities affected Banyamulenge's life in so many ways. These include discrimination against the Banyamulenge community through the history of the DRC, but also mostly after independence. From 1960s up to date, Banyamulenge community is facing discrimination at the hands of their ethnic groups, manipulated by some traditional leaders and some politicians. These discriminations started with the outbreak of the Simba Mulele rebellion in the western part of the Congo, which later spread on in the April 1964 to Uvira and Fizi and Mwenga territories where Banyamulenge were living. Then it follows by the assassination of Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba on 17 January 1961. The Banyamulenge pastoralists were not keen to embrace the democratic discourse produced by the Simba Mulele. Some Banyamulenge young fighters, they joined this rebellion, especially where they were lived, just to see how they can protect themselves and protect their livestock. They were hoped that this will save them if they joined this rebellion group, just to see how they can survive and see how their livestock were being just saved. Consequently, Banyamulenge created a local militia called Warriors. In Kinyamulenge is Abagriye. They were still there up to 1996. This Abagriye, or the Warrior, which formed the alliance with the Congolese National Army. The stand of Banyamulenge, which with Congolese National Army, was taken by the supporter of Armée Populaire de Libération in French, including this rebellion also. They were included the Babembe, Bafulero, and the Banyamulenge. As we have said before, so they started having some not a good a good neighboring. Before this colonial, they were abolished their land. And then when they joined this group we called Mulele, so, and when they were just together, these people, they were sharing this rebellion with Bafurero. This is the other ethnic group in DRC. They were just the members, all of them. So after they joined this group, they told them, okay, you joined with these people, but they are not good in the other way. So they decided also to take their cattle and they removed them to this area. And then Banyamulenge, after this, all these problems, they decided also to go away and join this Armée Nationale, which called National Army in English. After they joined this group, at the end of rebellion, local ethnic settlement would start again to dominate the political area. Was accompanied by the contestation of their identity. That is what even we are facing as Banyamulenge community these days, the contesting our identity. As I told you before, remember I said they are the one who are residents in this area before other ethnic groups. But after this period, even the colonial period arrived, so they were just seeing how they can divide all this community. So they were saying, oh, you guys, you are not from this area, you are from, especially they called the Rwanda. They were not even saying they are from Burundi or any other country, just they were referring them to Rwanda. And said, okay, you can go back to your country. You are not having any resident here, or your identity, some question. So this comes after the colonial period came in that area. So to divide these all groups into different what they are understanding. In 1959, what happened, the Rwandan Tutsi refugee from Rwanda settled in the region, and in 1972, there were also other refugees coming from Burundi, and they arrived in numbers in this area. Local politicians repeated, even facing the Banyamulenge, confunding them as these other new refugees who came. Remember, those were not the refugees, they came as first. After these other communities from Rwanda, Burundi, as refugees arrived in the area, so they were just facing Banyamulenge as comparing them with these new other people who came from all different areas. In this presentation then, I would like to briefly summarize the major periods of Banyamulenge facing discrimination. So there are more things or many problems that this group of Banyamulenge face, but I will just enumerate a few of them. Others you can go back, that's why I just printed these papers, for you to go and dig more and find out what happened or all problems this community faced. So among these few I enumerated here, there is one in 1972 and in 1981. Was there any manipulation of citizenship laws to crush this community, we are saying Banyamulenge. And then it was just comes from the politicians to bring these problems to show to the other neighboring countries, okay, these people are not good, or these people are not belongs here or within you. So the problem was started from there between the neighbors. And the other problems, or any other major problem, was in 1982 and 1987. Banyamulenge candidates were banned from the participating in the national legislative election by the Central Committee of the ruling party. For this reason, they were questioning them as the non-national, you are not from here, you are, their identity, as we were saying, were just contested, and they removed them from the participating in this party. So you see the problem started as you are following. Maybe I will ask you a question and see whether you are getting it.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's go to the, yes. Another tension comes in the course of democratization process launched in 1990, especially with regard to the Kinyarwanda-speaking population, as Mobutu fomented ethnic division to keep this opposition of his ruling party, to see how he can divide all these groups just to keep him showing and or ruling in this period. And the recent history of instability of Banyamulenge, it's not starting now in these years. Was even before 1996, as I showed you in this presentation. Then again in 1991, the conference called Conference National Sovereign was held, and toward this, Banyamulenge also was convened to draft of a new constitution and brought the path toward multi-party democracy. Under this pressure from the people from Kivu who were joining this conference, they excluded the group of Banyamulenge, telling them, you are not Congolese and you have to go out from this conference. You see all problems they were facing, and you get more when you read from those sources I provided to you. And another problem was in April 18, 1995. Vice President of Parliament was Mbembe in Fizi, Mlenge, and all Rwandaphones. On October also, on 17 October 1996, the governor of this South Kivu province, is now currently a provincial minister, currently, gave Banyamulenge 6 days to leave the country. So, telling them you are not belonging here. My question, which I will ask you, remember what we said before, still remember? So 6 days you are not belonging to this country, so you have to go back to a country. Which country? So you have to make a question from what I just presented now and what you were reading after that. So the implementation of that decision played a role in the outbreak of 1996. This was the, I think, Second War of the Congo. Yeah. And just before the start of the Congolese war, an estimated people of 16,000 members of Tutsi Banyamulenge of North Kivu province was forced to flee to the country, and they went to Rwanda. And in the Lubumbashi also is another province of DRC. Many people, the researchers, they estimated a number of dozens of students from the university. So they were also killed in this period in 1996. Telling them you are not Congolese, you have to go back to your country. Which country? I'm making my question mark. So you have to know what happened, which country they were sending them to. In 1998, Banyamulenge and other also Congolese Tutsi were killed across the country. The researchers are not specifying the number of people who were killed in this period, but I was in DRC that time. In the news they were saying many people are dying in this place, many people are dying in this place, but I don't have specific number of the people who were killed. Moreover, around 4,000 Banyamulenge also, who lived in Viura, this is in the Katanga province, they were also killed because of who? Because of that they are Banyamulenge. And in Tanganyika also, where they systematically attacked by the government soldiers and the militants from other local communities, the 600 people in this period also, they were killed. And in 2004, the days we are remembering today, our people who facing problem in their own country, DRC, they moved and fled to Burundi. They were refugees. Many people, they were killed from where they come from, running, seeing whether they can have peace and live. So they followed them until to the refugees camps, where they killed a number of people. Maybe you will see later on in the video they will show us. So they remain helpless, so nowhere to go. They exposed to the starvation. And again, the national and the international area where they were living, where they ran into, everywhere they were facing all these problems. So my presentation ending here, so I just briefly give you a picture on what happened in this community since when the colonial regime were entering in the Africa, let's say in the area. So these people or this community, we are calling Banyamulenge, where they were living, they were not having a peace as the citizenship in the country because of the colonial period which comes in Africa. Not, we are just presenting now the Banyamulenge community, but in other many African areas, these colonizers, they were arriving in the area and divide the people they were living as friends, as good neighbors. And some of these people, they were facing so many problems. So let me stop by here, just giving you a picture of what happened and the history and background of Banyamulenge. And I have said whether anyone can get any question, because we do not have enough time. Please come to me after we go out. I will just give you another picture if you have any question. For the comment, please welcome. So thank you for this time and for listening.
De milliers de personnes. La République démocratique du Congo a connu des guerres tribales à répétition.
Ma réaction, c'est la consternation. Je suis consterné par ce qui est arrivé. Je pense que c'est lâche de tuer des réfugiés. C'est lâche de commettre un génocide, même en terre étrangère. J'aurais essayé de comprendre que ce génocide se soit commis en terre colombée, mais que les réfugiés soient poursuivis, même dans leur dernier retranchement pour être génocidés. Je pense que c'est inexplicable, c'est inacceptable. Et je suis d'autant plus consterné que ceux qui ont commis ce génocide des Banyamulenge sont venus du Congo. Les enquêtes vont certainement le confirmer. Il faudra une enquête internationale pour faire connaître la vérité. Le génocide s'est commis sur des sols burundais, sur des sujets congolais, et manifestement les assaillants étaient congolais, rwandais et burundais. Je suis d'autant plus concerné encore que parmi les Congolais qui ont commis ces crimes, il y a des membres qui facilement appartenaient à la milice et qui aujourd'hui sont membres de notre programme. C'est comme on dit, il y a une certaine honte à la vue de certaines misères. Parce qu'ils font partie de notre programme. Ils ne sont plus milices. C'est des mouvements intégrés dans la vie. Ils ont un commun. Les enquêtes devraient aboutir à dégager non seulement les auteurs matériels des faits, mais aussi et surtout les auteurs intellectuels et moraux. Qui a conçu ce génocide? Qui l'a planifié? Quelles sont les fonctions qu'ils exercent? Où qu'ils sont? La responsabilité ne se limite pas aux exécutants qui ont utilisé des machettes, qui ont utilisé des armes, qui ont incendié et calciné les corps. La responsabilité, c'est aussi et surtout les auteurs intellectuels et moraux de ces crimes. Ça s'appelle génocide. Massacre, tuerie, ce n'est pas ça. Les éléments constitutifs du crime de génocide sont réunis dans le cas d'espèce. Qu'il plaise à Dieu que ce texte ne se répète plus jamais.
Excellent. Une première question. Est-ce que vous pensez qu'il y a un message particulier à passer, par exemple, aux réfugiés qui sont dans les autres camps, par exemple à Djambougou ou bien à Djibouti?
Le message, bien sûr, c'est un message de réconfort. La douleur que je sais que parmi ceux qui sont morts ici, il y en a que j'ai reçus hier et avant-hier, que je connais, des cousins, des frères, que j'ai vus dans la salle de l'hôtel, mais que je ne peux plus revoir précisément. Il faut donc que ceux qui sont encore vivants aient le réconfort. Parce que, comme chrétien, je pense que la Bible dit vrai lorsqu'elle dit un jour on dira ô mort, où est ta victoire, ô mort, où est ton ennemi. En attendant, avec les autorités burundaises, avec les autorités congolaises, nous allons faire le maximum que nous pouvons pour que ceux qui sont vivants dans les camps de réfugiés à Djambougou ou ici, ici, ce qui est arrivé au niveau icyo tuvuga ni uko ishema byabaye twari hano ejo bahavuye ejo mu bantu bamwe twakiriye batubwira ibibazo byabo bitewe n'uko gusubira muri Kongo hari abatakiri ishano ni uko abantu bicwa batazize amakosa yabo ariko bazize icoreco ururimi bavuga cyangwa isura yabo ishano kandi ni uko abantu bishwe n'abantu bavuye muri Kongo. Iyo jenoside yabereye mu Burundi abishwe n'abakongomani ariko ababishe barimo abakongomani n'abanyarwanda n'abarundi. Rero umuntu akayibaza niba hari amoko amwe agomba kubaho n'atagomba kubaho. Igitangaza kandi ni uko mu bantu bakoze iryo shano mu bavuye muri Kongo mu bakongomani harimo abantu bigeze kwita abamarimari ariko bari mu ngabo za Kongo, igisirikare cya Kongo. Rero bikaba ari ngombwa kumenya inzego zapanze ibyo bintu ni bande, abakuru babo bantu ko ari abasirikare bo muri Kongo. Abo baje batabizi bari babizi. Igikuru si uguhana gusa abakoze abarashe cyangwa abatwitse. Igikuru ni uguhana bose ababitekereje, ababipanze, abapolitiki babiri. Nizere ko politiki abashite cyangwa abantu babona ko bananiwe kurusha abantu iwabo kurusha bakabakurikirana ngo babice no mu gihugu bavugiyemo. Ibyo bintu nizere ko bitazongera kuba gusa.
Members were among those killers. Coalition we mentioned from Burundi, Rwanda, and DRC. So we really apologize. We were expecting to see other images.
Sympathize with us. When I see the Secretary General, I see the President, I see all the comrades. We're really happy to be with you guys. It's always an honor as well to have Dr. Tsepo, who has been with us, I think, for the past 5 years. It's really a privilege to have you here. I think I'm going to be very brief. As everyone knows that DRC has been a war zone for the longest time. They just give us the background where it all stems. In 2004, there was a conflict, an army conflict that caused tension in the country, where some of Banyamulenge that were living in Uvira, it's a city next to Burundi. They decided to leave the country because that tension could incite any form of violence that could cause genocide or massacre. They decided to leave the country. They went to the neighboring country in Burundi. A month later, if I'm not mistaken, they fled in June. In August 13th, there were rebels from, they called the National Force of Liberation, FNL, in coalition with other rebels from Rwanda. They came and they attacked that camp. Shortly, that camp, there were also other minority groups living there, but Banyamulenge were isolated and were massacred on the spot. 166 people died on the spot, and more than 100 were injured. And the refugee camp, they were like 100 meters from the army from Burundi, as well as the peacekeepers from United Nations. I read a report from Human Rights Watch that says that when they asked the army of Burundi and the United Nations, their response was like, they only need notice after the killings. It's practically impossible to kill 100 people, more than 100 people in 100 meters, and you could not notice that. That was it. It's been 16 years that we lost our brothers and sisters. But shockingly, the people sooner after that, the spokesperson of that particular movement, his name is Pastor Harimana, and the leader of that movement, Agathon Rwasa, as we speak, they're holding a very high position in Burundi government. By the regime of Nkurunziza, if I'm not mistaken, Peter Nkurunziza, who's late, that guy was the deputy president of parliament. He's still holding a higher position, and the spokesperson who claimed to be responsible of those attacks. It's so sad that 16 years later, there haven't been any justice from United Nations, from the neighboring countries and DRC. No one from DRC is doing the follow-up like from the government. That purely shows that something that happened to the foreigners, so they don't care. With regard to the current situation, it's those kind of perpetrators of violence that kept on going on. And historically, they've been before the colonizers and imperialists. They came to divide the continent. So originally, Banyamulenge dates back to a period pre-1885. And their original address, if I can call it that, that has been today as referred as Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania. So when they came to Congo, there were no Rwanda, there were no Tanzania, there were no Uganda. It was just a space, as you all know. But from the liberation and from our own analysis where it all started, after losing a man who understood his identity, who was a Pan-Africanist, Patrice Lumumba, I believe there were a division that came out of that trauma of a loss. So what happened is that the infight occurs. They start fighting those divisions. So that's what the problem, we have missed the foundation of liberation. That's how the ethnic cleansing started. And I was born in a war zone. I grew up in an ethnic cleansing, military dictatorship. So growing up in that political domain, it taught me how to understand the conflict of rights. I was told at a very young age that I'm a foreigner in my own native land. I mean, all of us. My father faced that, the generation before my peers as well. But before, when the colonizers were still colonizing what became DRC, they were living in a good peace. In 1996, let me be very quick, we were given an ultimatum to leave the country within 6 days. So the governor of the South Kivu said Banyamulenge, or Tutsi in general, they must leave the DRC within 6 days, or else they're gonna kill all of them. Those statements to defend for themselves. That's when there was a war against the regime of Mobutu Sese Seko. That's 1996. It went on 1998 until now. But we have a current situation where there's a human tragedy in that particular territory from 2017. So all the villages where Banyamulenge will live in, they have been burned down. They took their cattle, as you all told that Banyamulenge are cattle holders. They are now squeezed in a very small place called Minemo. And all that happened in front of UN, in front of the government, and there are evidence that shows that the government supported all those rebels. So the neighboring tribes, Babembe, Bafulero, and Banyintu, they've decided to come together to make sure that they chase Banyamulenge away, they must return where they come from. That's the current situation that we're facing now. Even the people that we've got in the government, out of the member of cabinet, what they call ministers, there's only one Munyamulenge. Out of the MPs, member of parliament, there's only one Munyamulenge. It's even ridiculous that some commentator or political analyst, they feel like they need to assign blame to them as being part of the problem, when in fact they should be calling them victimized. So we have been facing that tragedy up to date. There haven't been justice to the people that died. There haven't been any form of guarantee to bring peace. So what we're here today, it's very confusing to ask justice when there's no even peace. First of all, we are still facing a lot of atrocities up to date. So we could be asking for justice, but how do we ask justice when there's no even peace? It's very hard, and I believe that people who has, it's great humility and pain to ask anyone who's a believer in Pan-Africanist values, in human rights, in Ubuntu, to sympathize with Banyamulenge and see if we can get peace. We are yet to ask peace, justice can come after. But having an organization like Not In My Name International that deals with the social justice, we officially exposing this matter in front of you, and let's see as African if we can find a solution. I know you've done it before for Zimbabwe. I know you've done it with Nigeria now, and with us as a minority, we have to notice that Banyamulenge are insignificant fraction of any simple Congolese population. We are very a minority, and I think that's why we are facing these issues. Thank you.
Hold a doctorate in political science from University of Johannesburg. He obtained his doctorate 2019, and also he obtained his master's at University of Zululand, and his master's was he obtained his master's of art degree in systematic philosophy in 2013. So I would like to call him to give us his speech. You are welcome.
You know, I promised myself I'm going to greet you in French. Ça va? Ça va bien. Comment ça va? Ça va bien. So thank you very much for that welcome. You know, this year is a very sad occasion, and even a more tragic narrative when we think about the fact that we have students taught in our institutions and the Banyamulenge is never heard of, from undergrad right up to postgrad. We don't teach about these dynamics that happen so deep in the DRC. You know, we always glide over these details, and it questions, especially now in this time of decolonization, it questions the type of intellectuals that we're having in our institutions who choose to not revise the curriculum as they teach it. Now, I'm humbled to have been associated with the Banyamulenge community in South Africa, at least for the past 5 years or so. When I gave the first keynote address in 2015, you know, I came to you guys with a colleague who called himself Chris Sankara. You remember this? Yeah, we do. And I remember the president at the time came to me very anxious to find out, who's this guy? Are you sure this guy is one of us? And to be honest, Chris, when he heard I was coming to speak, he just asked, can I please come with you? And, you know, because I know the story of what happened. And I said, no, look, I have no problem, let's go. And you remember when he came to the front what he said. So for the rest of the audience who are not part of that conversation, he comes to the front and he basically gives the side of the Babembe. So Dr. Beatrice gave you the background of the other ethnic groups that have been alongside the Banyamulenge, and the Babembe are one of them. But these Babembe were not friendly to the Banyamulenge, at least after certain incidences took place amongst them. And so Chris is one of them, and he stands up and he gives a very negative report about the Banyamulenge. So, you know, he branded them as these are the guys that were causing problems in the Congo, they were killing people. And we let him have his say because he asked to speak and we gave him the slot. And then I allowed the president to give, I think there was a keynote, who was the guest? But he gave, basically, we watched the video and we saw what happened at Gatumba and we continued. Then I had to take the floor. But in all of this, what I took from that experience was we are not doing enough to actually educate ourselves with realities and the real narratives that remain marginalized when we are teaching about Africa's international relations, when we are teaching about the politics in Africa. I did say last year that, you know, the occasion of commemoration is an opportunity to educate. So when we meet in such occasions, it's one thing, and I like what Dr. Beatrice did because she kind of took away a lot of what I had to say by giving the background, because there's a vast background of the story of the Banyamulenge beyond Gatumba, pre-Gatumba and beyond Gatumba massacre. Now, what I wanted to do this year, I did not want to come and speak too much because I have a book that's now in progress with a colleague in the Netherlands who's a member of the Banyamulenge. Just remind me his name? Kanyuma. So, you know, Kanyuma he's a PhD candidate in the Netherlands, and he's working with, obviously, people from the Netherlands who, because of resources and the likes. And I'm thinking to myself, imagine the dynamics of writing about your colonizers. And you always have to find yourself checking yourself as to, okay, am I not harsh here? And you know, it's interesting for me when Beatrice was speaking here. Not once did she say who the colonizers are. She kept on saying the colonizers, the colonizers. She did not say who were the colonizers. Now imagine being in the Netherlands and you're doing this kind of work. You know, it's just too much. So we should know, of course, that the DRC was colonized by the French. In fact, that whole region is the Francophone region, right? And we should also know that when we're talking about this kind of politics in that region, the literature refers to it as the Great Lakes region. Okay? We must, of course, interrogate this terminology because it's not how we narrate our own story or how we should narrate our own stories. But of course, we will move with what's in the literature for the sake of having the conversation. But I stand on the decolonial turn that says we need to actually rewrite our own narrative using our own literature. You know, not this language that is problematic that we're failing to interrogate. Okay? I'm struggling with my PowerPoint. I want to go right to the beginning. Right, so I'm given this when as we speak now, the minority survivors that are still there, are still being under attack. There is no form of security whatsoever. Every day we're hearing stories of updates, and it takes a different turn when you know the victims and you know the victims and their families. It stops being an academic exercise, it stops being a research, because you're talking about real people in real life, and you just disrespect her time. As I was listening to Dr. Beatrice speak, the sources she's consistently using, yes, they're resourceful, but I have reservations with a lot of them. Okay, she's now saying they're old. She's speaking for herself now, okay? So I have, what we need to do when we go into our African narratives or our African archives is we need to first acknowledge that the archive is filled with people who are not us. And so what we are going to find is what they think or how they saw us. And therefore this is what then becomes mainstream literature. Problematic. Okay, very problematic. Okay, so the massacre against the Banyamulenge and Gatumba. So before I speak at length about the massacre in Gatumba, so it's already established that this is the 13th of August 2004. But we can't start the story there. Okay? We can't start the story there, and I'm hoping I'm going to give a brief intro, a background, then I'll talk about the massacre, and then a contemporary aftermath, which Mpundu was trying to just give here in a nutshell. And then I really want to go into diagnosing the problem. What exactly is the problem in this conversation when we're talking about the Banyamulenge people? Then towards solving the problem, and here, because I was instructed to talk to peace and security, I'd like to look at what the organizations have done with regards to this. And I'm going to try and just fly through because we don't have the time, but also just so that I don't lose people in the process. And then I will leave the references. So, it is, as a beginning, as a premise, we need to understand that we are talking about, so we are in the continent of Africa, right? And this area that we're talking about is here, well, the east of the ocean. And of course, we notice that, and this is a very bad map, because as you can notice, we don't really no, you see he's jumping. Remember there are two maps here. There's this and this. So, walk with me. This is a bad map. And the reason I chose it is precisely because mainstream Africa, they choose, it's very selective depending on who does the map, that they will omit certain places and they will include certain places. So Burundi and Rwanda are not big enough to be here. That's how minute they are. I'm trying to illustrate how small the Banyamulenge people, when we talk about them, and why they just have always been trampled upon because of their size, right? On the second map, now you see them. Now you see how huge Congo is, right? You see them here. It's huge. But so when we now zone in, we see how there's Rwanda, there's Burundi. Now, I want you to understand where Gatumba, because we're talking about the massacre. So, we know that it's in South Kivu. Well, no. We know that it's in Burundi. So the reason they went to Burundi is because they were chased away from Congo, right? And there's a camp that was just on the border. And this was a refugee camp placed there by the United Nations. Now this is very important. The UN placed the refugee camp here at the border, and at this time, as you were saying, the deputy president was Nkurunziza, who would eventually become president of the country. He just recently passed away. Nkurunziza is a very interesting character. I don't want to go into depth onto Nkurunziza, but you're talking of a guy who was able to host his own elections and declare himself president. And you have to understand that the UN is such a joke that he was accredited. Then, the rest of the African presidents are such a joke that they came to the ceremony to recognize him as the president. These are the kind of African politics we're practicing. Okay? So how then do we expect to speak rationality to such people? Okay, so that's Nkurunziza, right? So I wanted you to have an understanding that where we are, the place that we're talking about, where GATUMBA, where the massacre took place. Thank you very much. Right, so it happens in this region here, right? Now, okay, so I zoomed in even further now, right? So this is where the different ethnicities were given different spots in the refugee camp. So you could see the difference because they had different colors. So it was easy to distinguish. But unknown to them, in this case the Banyamulenge, they did not know that their camp was given a particular color because it was supposed to be easily identifiable to the attackers when they arrived. So what they did, they went to a church service. And in that church service, after they did the choirs and the like, they came back to camp. And not an hour went by when they started hearing songs coming towards their camp, their tent. And initially they thought, oh, maybe it's other church members and the likes from the other ethnic groups, because they were all already, in their home, right? As they got closer, the singing got closer, shots started. And you must keep in mind, there are kids here, there are grandkids, there are grandparents here. They are basically a typical families were there in that tent. And when I was looking at the documentaries, to listen to the survivors say the only reason I survived is because I was lying in blood from my fellow sisters, brothers, and so I just lay there and pretended to be dead. And that's how they missed me. And then this particular victim I'm talking about says, why? Because they want to burn the place down. Now she said, I thought to myself, do I lie here and just die in fire? Or do I, for some reason, find a way to fight? I would rather die by the bullet than die by fire. This is what she says. And she said, as I was having this conflict in my mind, they started lighting the one part of the tent. And when no reaction happened, they then said, nobody's alive here. And so they ran away. And she says, that is how I and the other survivors who were in there, that's how we survived. Now, just for a second, think, what would you have done in that moment? If it was you. And this is a woman talking. It's not a man. So to appreciate the complexity of what they were faced with that night. And as I continue to go into my reading and my literature, and my footages, as I was looking at the documentaries, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that the perpetrators are alive. The perpetrators have the balls to say the things that they say on camera. And there has been no so-called Security Council. I say so-called because how, in this day and age, do we still expect colonizers to be our champions in our fights? I mean, that's ridiculous. It's like saying black people in South Africa are looking to Afrikaans people to free them. I mean, wake up. You know, it's not going to happen. Right? So, I want to play last year. So this was us here last year. And just to get a feel, even though we've been given background, I liked what Madame Gaju, how she gave the background, and I just want to, because it's about 4 minutes, I just want her to speak to us in that background. Can you please help me play? Where is he? Please, no, go back. So yeah, you want to play this one? No, you're going back. Where are you going? No, it's back. Sorry, okay. Yeah, so it's this one. This one here. Please press play there. Ladies and gentlemen, fourth industrial revolution is dealing with us. Anyway, as they struggle with that, she basically gives a typical background of the story, what happened, where the people are, blah, 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 blah. But what's important and what I'm trying to draw to your attention in her background is that if we still have the Banyamulenge littered all over the world, the community that we have in South Africa is just a splinter. You know, in the other footages I was looking at the other commemorations happening in other countries. So I was listening to one of the former presidents, I think, of the Banyamulenge community in America, and they gave an opportunity to a youngster who's now doing medicine in Harvard, who's a survivor, and he was about 4 years old when this happens. We want you to assist us to play. Yeah. So you listen to that young man's story, him narrating what happened to them. Of course, he was at 4. You know, you'd like to think, I mean, what can he remember? But to hear how he actually relives that memory is shocking. And the fact that today he sits at Harvard Medical School also tells, you know, a story of how we can actually rise, you know, through all tribes, I mean, through all challenges that are before you. I think it's a story worth telling, you know. So, of course, there are individual stories, and then there's the group story of the people as a group. But I think what I've seen up to now, there's 2 colleagues that shared books that they've written in Banyamulenge. But something is missing in those books. The biggest problem is language. You know, they would write a book like that in French. So already there's a barrier. There's an entire readership that you miss just on language. So which I think is something that why I'm choosing to write this book is precisely because at least we need an Anglo version so that, you know, the community can be heard, can be read, and you guys can be known more. Your story can actually go to other audiences. Are we winning? Whoa. You can't play it? So you can't play? Okay. What is important here today, in this occasion, is I was saying that if there are Banyamulenge communities spread out around the world, and every year on the 13th, they try to meet, to remember, and also to just share the information so that people are also aware of their plight and their story. It begs the question of what's the role that universities and research institutes are doing on that score. I'm more interested in social movements as well. Because it can't be that we're expecting the victims, to ride this on their own without institutional power. It can only go so far. Okay? And I did say last year when I was speaking that we don't want monologues, we want dialogues. So if we commemorate and the only people that we have in the audience are the Banyamulenge people, what do we expect to happen when we finish this occasion? Still, just here in Pretoria, people still won't know. That there's actually a community called the Banyamulenge, and this is their story, and this is the kind of assistance and intervention they would wish they could get in terms of support. Okay? So let's keep it moving. Now, I wrote an article that is available online, and what I find interesting with this picture is that most articles on the Banyamulenge have this picture, which I don't understand. Is it because, okay, we understand it's a war zone, people are fighting, it's not safe, media, obviously they're barred, blah, blah, blah. But why is it that this is the only picture that we can, whenever we talk Banyamulenge right now, this picture is, any journalist, if I'm to give an article, this is the picture they say they find. So, food for thought. Anyway, so I wrote this article, which was in September 15th, and this is on an online website called The Cultural Review. Okay, so you can feel free to Google that up. And the reactions I got are very interesting. First of all, of course, I did get the feedback that it's gone viral in the community of the Banyamulenge, blah, blah, blah. And someone went as further as interpreting it in French. Okay? I still did not get that French version. But then I took out a follow-up article in the Sunday Tribune on the Banyamulenge people. The Sunday Times, so there's a story I can tell about the media in this country when it is issues to do with cases like the Banyamulenge. The Maiden Guardian and the Maverick, if it's not going to be something that is controversial against the government or something controversial against, which, these guys are in the business of selling papers. So if you are talking about stuff that is really going deep, that's not what they want to publish. Okay? Now, since then, of course, South Africa has grown, we've got independent media, blah, 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 blah. But even then, and I'll talk now as an analyst on first AN7 and then now Newsroom Africa. We have fought with the political editor because he just refuses for us to have a conversation on the Banyamulenge. So we asked the question, why do you call it Newsroom Africa if all we're talking about is South Africa? And we will talk about, the Banyamulenge matter. But what I'm trying to raise to your attention here is, and I did say last year, I'm willing to go into partnership, but this is not my fight, this is your story. And I would appreciate it if you champion it. We can only assist, give backup, but it's your story. These are your lives, these are your parents, this is what happened to you, But we are more than happy to be there and to assist with the resources we have from institutions that we're linked with. Okay, so we'll see how far we go. So another article is coming out, I think, myself and why am I forgetting his name? I don't know why. I mean, I'm writing with him, but I forget his name. But of course, it's because we're collaborating, and he's in the Netherlands and I'm here. But we want to bring out a stream of more articles, and the latest one, because I had said here, why are the Banyamulenge in East Congo not on Genocide Watch? The latest article will be, they are now on Genocide Watch. Banyamulenge are now on Genocide Watch. The question we must ask is, why has it taken so long, and what exactly have they done since they've been on Genocide Watch? I mean, we can't have a situation where people are still worried about their safety and security, yet they're on Genocide Watch. It boggles the mind. Okay? So that's the issue we have. So the actual massacre, I don't want to waste too much time on that because my videos have let me down. Because I wanted to show the videos and why it is. So the contemporary aftermath. I'm going to try to give an overview here of currently, since 2017, what's happening on the ground. What I always find interesting is we're afraid of politicians. We're very afraid of politicians. In fact, the mere fact that we're speaking about the Banyamulenge people, the threats that people receive. I know that SABC gave an interview when the people of DRC Congo in Cape Town were striking against the Banyamulenge. When we contacted SABC and said, what kind of journalism is one-sided? Why didn't you bring to the studio also somebody from the Banyamulenge with that other person, and let's hear both sides of the coin? To this day, SABC has not returned to us. Now, I'm showing you, because we're in South Africa, I'm talking mostly what's happening here. In the other commemorations, they speak about what's happening in those countries. So it also tells you how, the powers that be also need to get a yes or a no before they fly to anything. And we can't work like that, where if the politics are also going to expose you, we can't need your permission. We have to do what we have to do. So for me, in terms of growing and exposure of the story, we have those kind of hitches that we hit. Also, research institutes, I find, if they're not willing to give you the kind of money to continue to conduct that research, or it's not complementing their agenda. Early this year, this video, it's a pity now this is not playing. This video came through from New York on what's happening. The students in New York are talking about Save the Mulenge. Okay, some of you would be familiar with these scenes, right? Yes? Yes. The different people putting these up, these are all short clips of the people basically coming alive to what's happening now on the ground in the east of DRC. Okay, to their family, to their cousins, to their relatives. And they are from elsewhere in the world, they're not in Congo. But the fact that it's happening in New York, that students can actually be raising the bar on what's happening, back home, is shocking. Given that the UN headquarters is right there in New York. Okay? So it just shows us the level of the depth of ignorance. So, towards solving the problem, I did say at the beginning that most of the people that would take interest and make the mainstream are not our people. So when I was looking for solutions, I had this in mind and it gave me a lot of discomfort. But there is a lecturer who's a Mulenge And he suggested that, sure, we can have judiciaries set up. We can have like the model of the Truth and Reconciliation in South Africa in '96. But he says, all that would not be enough. What is needed is more of the commemorations like this one. Because part of healing is part of reliving and retelling the story. Precisely because it is getting lost with the years. The kids that are grandkids, great-grandkids are not going to know if commemorations are not taken as serious archive material. So I agree with this position, but I may add that can we not have this annually the way we are doing in our context? I'd be very happy if we can go to University of Pretoria, go to University of Wits, UJ, and we will open up the seminars. We'll open up the conferences. I mean, the money is there, but we need you guys because you have to write to us, and we have to then, we'll do what we do. We'll raise it in our meetings, we'll fight for, these things to happen. And then we can have it in those spaces because students need to know at an institutional level. Not, right now, this is a very marginalized space. One can even argue it's a very elite space. So we need to go down to the people, right? And not expect people to come to us because we think that marketing is going to be enough. So let's institutionalize this issue of the Banyamulenge by involving the institutions. So that's you guys, that's your homework. And then we can do what we have to do in our institutions, okay? Now, like I said, it's people who are not us, but we must acknowledge these people because they are doing something that a lot of our own brothers and sisters in power are failing to do. This is a member of parliament intervene to the victims that are consistently, under attack. She wants to know what are the remedial practices that are currently at play. If there are none, she wants them to immediately intervene. She's talking as a member of parliament in England. We're in Africa. What the hell are our members of parliament doing in our countries? So, which is why I'm saying, we need to also check ourselves. So this is showing at least that, that we do have some other voices contributing to what is happening, right? Of course, we cannot neglect the latest one from the UN, the SG, who has accepted that they now know what's happening there. Though, of course, we don't like this media statement rhetoric of we now know, we're now going to see what we can do, blah, 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 blah. People are dying. People are dying and you are still talking diplomacy. Why have we not seen any arrest yet to this day? So these are the things I think we need to, when we want to raise what should happen going forward, to even think.
They are labeling the Banyamulenge as Tutsis that do not belong in Congo. So the background being said, the resources are there, the materials, you can have as many as 10 materials of resources that have been written by people not of Banyamulenge community, saying exactly when the Banyamulenge been in the DRC. But it's very pity to see now on the radio, politicians, high power, influential people in the DRC still saying that the Banyamulenge do not have land to stay in. So the recommendations can be like a very, as Dr. Tseko said, you go into the UN resolutions, you can say, you know, we have this decree, or the UN summits have said never again. They've said it multiple times, but we can still see the genocide going on. But only my recommendation, the only recommendation I wanted to say, more of what we are doing here, having not in my name activists here, having the likes of Dr. Tsebo, or all other people being compassionate about the violation of human rights and atrocities of a population because of their race, their gender, or their religion, is really to have everyone feel like a human being, or injustice of a human being, or injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, as been well said by Martin Luther King. The other recommendation I would like to give is to educate. I think at this point, when you hear politicians in DRC talking out of their lungs, someone who have about 5 degrees in political science, international relations, in law, history, still saying that these people, they do not own any land in the DRC. It's very shameful, but I believe that if we can have a program of educating the young people, as Mpundu said, you were born, you were 5 years old, and you're already being told that you're a foreigner. Or you meet, even I don't want to spare my community, you are born and they tell you that is a Mubembe, that is a Mufuliro. Already you are being separated by the ethnic partisans. So I want to recommend from across the world to have programs, materials that really encourages the education, to make so that people can reflect and be able to respect the cultural diversity. Because we cannot have one single community or culture partisanship in one country. In the Congo, we have more than 400 ethnic groups, so we have to tell everyone to really feel like we belong in the same country. So that is actually my recommendation, and of course we are asking the international community, the regional and sub-regional organizations such as AU and SADC and all those, to really help put the justice on the perpetrators. These are the people that commit the international crimes that should be really be brought to justice. Thank you very much.
Mr. Eve, you are welcome.
In 1 hour, not even more. And then it's not like they were not aware of what they are doing. They did it by intention. So, as we are, we don't have power to bring justice to those who committed the crime. But if you are calling people, if you are alive, they're enjoying the governmental post, they are working, and then no one is untouchable. Everyone can face justice. I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank especially the guests. I really appreciate for your sympathy and then support, and your teaching are very impressive. I would like also to thank members of representatives here. I have Mr. Siabulela Gentle, the President. We thank you so much for coming. We do have also the Mpumalelo Masango, Chief Operations Officer. Mo Sen, Head of Communication. I'm here with send our voices will be go. I also have Mr. Herman Zikali. I'm not sure if I'm reading the names nicely. He's the head of security. Friends of all of the countries who managed to come to support us. We really appreciate, and then we love you. And then more than that, we us anytime, and then we need you in all events that we'll be having. Thank you so much for support, even though she's also a victim of what happened, but it's a sacrifice to be here. I really thank you so much for your time.